and hearing the stories that he helped create, it warms my spirit. You know, even though he's not here, Ahmaud always knew it was going to be big. He just ain't know it was going to come at the expense of his life.
They were high school sweethearts, raising 4 beautiful children.
They were together over 20 years.
She just wanted a family.
My mom was like our superhero.
But her story has a tragic end.
Everything was good, and then my mom was gone.
It looked like there's been a struggle.
There's a lot of blood.
As the investigation begins, the mystery deepens.
She had placed a call to 911.
She knew something was going to happen to her.
Jealousy can bring out the darkest parts in people.
I remember hearing her saying, like, I'm as good as dead.
August 29th, 2011, 5:15 a.m. It's a quiet Monday morning in Longwood, Florida, a small suburban town just 30 minutes north of Orlando.
A lot of it was very rural for a long time, but it's not that way anymore. It's more of a bedroom community. A lot of the people here work in Orlando.
It's a wonderful community. It has more of a communal feel. It feels more of home.
Over on the west side of town, Jim Matthews spots his colleague pulling up.
Jim was waiting for his coworker to get there.
Morning, man.
What's going on?
Hey.
It was a typical carpooling situation.
As the two begin their morning commute to work, they make a startling discovery.
Yo, stop the car!
They look over to the side and they see somebody, so they figure, well, this person might be hurt. Being good Samaritans, they just wanted to go check it out and see if the individual's okay.
Hey, miss, you okay? Oh, God.
As they got closer, they noticed there was a pool of blood.
Hey, man, call 911.
They were somewhat in a panic or shocked as any of us would be, but they knew that they needed help.
912, please, paramedical.
Yes, ma'am. We have a person laying on the ground with blood around their head.
Police are on the scene within minutes, but they're too late.
When first responders arrive at the scene, they realize very quickly that this lady is beyond help.
She was gone.
It was obvious that this was a very horrific crime that had occurred. There was a lot of trauma to her face and head.
But that's not all.
She was sprawled out, legs somewhat spread, naked from the waist down.
The state of the victim's clothes leads police to believe she could be the target of a gruesome sexual assault. But who is she?
She didn't have identification, and there was no sign of her purse or wallet in the car either.
Instead, it's the car itself that offers deputies their first clue about the woman's identity.
Once they were able to run that, they learned that the car was registered to a woman named Sarah Rucker.
18-year-old Sarah Rucker always had a knack for connecting with people.
She was always happy. Everybody wanted to be around her. She made everybody laugh. Had a bunch of friends.
My mom was very bubbly. She was goofy, funny, but feisty at the same time. She was only 4'11", but you would think she was 6 foot with how much confidence and sass she had.
There was one man who'd always found Sarah's sass to be attractive. Her high school sweetheart, Dwayne White, also known as Wayne.
Sarah and Wayne were young when they met. That was her first serious relationship.
They were good. They was always joking together. Always having a good time.
After graduation, Sarah and Wayne took their relationship to the next level.
They moved together and she got pregnant with her first child.
Looks okay. But I have a screw left.
You know it comes with instructions, right?
It kind of just happened. So she had me, and then she had my brother right after me. She made my brother a year and a day apart. It was okay, I guess we're doing this family thing.
In 1998, Sarah gave birth to the couple's third child, and a fourth followed 1 year later.
She was happy, very excited. She always wanted a family.
Motherhood came easy for Sarah.
She was a great mother. Her kids loved her, She gave them anything they wanted. Spent a lot of time with them.
She was the best mom that anyone asked for. She was the go-to mom, the down-to-earth mom. I was never afraid to go to her with anything.
By 2001, Sarah and Wayne still hadn't tied the knot, but their relationship seemed stronger than ever.
There was a lot of love.
The couple shared responsibilities at home, and Wayne took an active role in helping raise the children.
He took pride in taking care of us. He was a very, very good cook. He was the one that was doing the majority of the cooking.
Though providing for a family of 6 was no easy task.
In the early 2000s, he worked for Waste Management as a garbageman. And then after that, he was, I guess, hustling.
We did a lot of general work, like just laboring work,
To help provide for her family, Sarah decided to enroll at a local college.
I remember she was always studying.
I don't know how she did it, but she did it.
The hard work paid off, and Sarah earned her certification as a surgical technician. Before long, she landed a good-paying job at a suburban Orlando hospital.
The people there became like her family. Everyone loved her there, and she loved them.
In 2007, Sarah and Wayne decided to make their 20-year romance official.
The day that they got married, my dad was just like, "We have a surprise for y'all." And we're like, "What's the surprise?" She's like, "We just went to the courthouse and got married."
Soon after, the family moved out to the Orlando suburb of Deltona.
Seemed like they was happy to me because they were doing pretty good for themselves.
Sarah had even more reason to be happy in August of 2011.
The couple's daughter, Kira, had enrolled at Florida A&M University and was following in her mother's footsteps as a pharmacy major because she, too, wanted to help people in the medical profession.
And on the night of August 28th, Sarah was over the moon with pride.
It was actually the night before my first day of classes. And she was telling me, get some sleep. You got classes in the morning. I love you. Talk to you tomorrow.
But that was the last time Sarah would ever speak to her daughter.
At 5:15 the following morning, 2 commuters found a dead body in a Longwood, Florida parking lot.
She had suffered tremendous injuries to her neck area. There was, I believe, at least 11 slice marks where her throat was cut.
Law enforcement was not quite sure whether this was some type of random mugging or attack, or whether this might have been some type of targeted killing.
Whoever did this was a monster, and they needed to be found immediately.
Mother of 4, Sarah Rucker, was honored that her daughter planned on following in her footsteps.
Her eldest daughter was starting her first day at college, and Sarah was so proud of her.
The night before, she told me she loved me and everything, wishing me luck and everything, told me to call her.
But on the morning of August 29, 2011, officers in Longwood, Florida respond to a brutal homicide that will turn Sarah's family upside down.
There's a pool of blood. It looks like there's a savage attack. They were able to ascertain that the car belonged to a woman named Sarah Rucker. They were not sure yet that the person who had died was Sarah Rucker, but it was a start.
Within moments, detectives arrive on the scene. As they look around, they discover what appears to be defensive wounds on the victim's hands.
When somebody's defending themselves from a knife attack, they tend to grab the knife, try and grab the hand, they grab the knife, and they get slice marks on their fingers. And she had those.
The wounds suggest she had fought desperately with her attacker. And the blood-soaked pavement gives detectives a crucial clue about when the murder occurred.
The blood was still tacky and hadn't dried completely. She had only been dead about 1 or 2 hours.
While crime scene technicians begin processing the scene, detectives question the 2 men who found the body.
And at that point, they hadn't exonerated those 2. They wanted an opportunity to be able to speak to both men, to figure out what they knew.
How long were you here before your friend showed up?
Maybe 5 minutes, 10 at most.
You didn't notice the body?
No, it was behind the car.
Did you see anyone else besides your friend when you got here this morning?
No, we didn't even notice the body till right when we was about to pull off the lot.
So, nothing suspicious that you can recall?
No, honestly, it just looked like somebody left their car there overnight.
While neither of the men are able to provide detectives with much information, detectives do rule them out as suspects.
Neither of these men had any blood on them, and they wouldn't have had any time to clean up or anything like that.
I never got the sense that they were suspicious of those guys, just the fact that they called the police.
These were just good Samaritans. They didn't see anything that had happened. They just happened to stumble across this grisly crime scene.
With no witnesses to the crime itself, the detective's next step is to determine if the owner of the car is in fact their victim. Is this woman Sarah Rucker?
If Sarah was their victim, they needed to try and figure out what she was doing in a restaurant parking lot so early in the morning.
In the initial moments of the investigation, law enforcement was not quite sure what they had on their hands yet.
As detectives begin looking into Sarah Rucker, over on the north side of town, Sarah's colleagues start to get worried.
Holly Long and Casey Bennett worked at the hospital with Sarah and noticed she'd missed her shift that morning.
When she didn't show up to work, they immediately began to get nervous because they're like, this isn't like her.
My mom's always on time at work, so once she didn't show up, they just knew something was wrong.
The 2 women decide to make the 30-mile drive from Orlando to Sarah's house in the neighboring town of Deltona.
When they knock on the door, Sarah's daughter opens the door.
Hey, sweetie. Your mom at home? No, I think she left for work.
She says that when she woke up, Sarah was gone.
Why, is everything all right?
What? We must have passed her on the road.
They didn't want to upset Sarah's kids when it might turn out to be nothing, so they didn't say anything about how worried they were.
Though as they drove back to the hospital, their worry turned to fear.
They keep calling Sarah on their cell phone, and it just keeps going to voicemail. They get more and more worried every time they call.
Then, as they pass through Longwood, their fear turns to panic.
As they are heading back to the hospital, they see all of these blue and red lights, law enforcement, EMTs there, and they began to have a very sick feeling in their stomach.
Fearing the worst, the 2 women pull over to see if all the emergency vehicles have anything to do with their missing friend.
Both women got out of the car, and they ran up and they began talking with law enforcement.
And they identify that they're looking for a friend named Sarah Rucker. Please recognize the name Sarah Rucker as the owner of the vehicle. So at that point in time, what law enforcement did is they asked for these 2 young ladies to identify the body.
Very sorry, but we do need your help.
Despite their shock, Holly and Casey do reveal what could be a vital piece of information for detectives.
Is there anyone we can call? Any next of kin?
The kids! And Wayne! She's technically still married.
They were still married, but separated, and they didn't live together.
He actually's been dating this new girl named Aliso.
had detectives just uncovered a dangerous love triangle.
An estranged husband, a murdered wife, and a new girlfriend. Suddenly, there were red flags flying everywhere.
Detectives feel like there's a lot more to the story than they realize. It had to have been very difficult for both of these ladies when you consider the fact that they had no clue that a co-worker and a friend of theirs would be murdered in the grisly manner that Sarah Rucker was. You can't imagine what it is that they might have been experiencing that morning as they had to identify the remains of their good friend.
On the morning of August 29, 2011, detectives have positively identified 42-year-old Sarah Rucker as the victim of a brutal homicide. Now comes the difficult task of notifying her family.
I got a call from the counseling services telling me to go to their office. And it just had me sit down and was like, you need to call your brother. So I called him and he's like, Mama, they found her in Longwood. So I'm like, what do you mean found her? And he said, you know, she's dead.
They've also learned that Sarah Rucker has a potentially complicated relationship with her husband, 41-year-old Wayne White.
Sarah's friends just told detectives that while they were still technically married, Sarah and Wayne were actually separated.
In fact, according to Sarah's co-workers, the couple had separated a year earlier, mostly over financial issues.
My mom was getting kind of fed up with being the only one really doing everything. Everything fell on her shoulders and she was getting tired of it.
All these bills, the cable bill, the phone bill, the gas bill, they haven't been paid. What do you want me to do? I want you to...
It was a disappointment to him to not be able to really have an upholding career, especially with having his, children looking up to him, and to know that, your kids can't really say, I want to be like you when I grow up. So that did, bother him.
After over 2 decades together, the couple decided to call it quits, and Wayne moved out.
It was pretty unofficial, but we kind of knew that my dad wasn't going to come back.
Sarah's co-workers tell police that after the separation, Wayne met another woman named Allison.
They start to date, and he eventually moves into her home, and they start to have their own separate life apart from Sarah and the children.
Detectives make the 30-mile drive to Orlando to speak with Wayne.
We weren't sure yet that he was a solid suspect, but that's what we got to follow up on. We need to find Dwayne White.
Wayne White?
Yeah.
We're here about your wife, Sarah.
I heard about what happened. Everybody's been blowing up my cell phone. Just awful.
Mind if we ask you a few questions?
No, not at all.
He was actually very calm and relaxed, answered all of their questions.
We understand that you and Sarah are separated.
Yeah, we were. It was my fault, actually.
Wayne was pretty honest about his role in the downfall of their marriage. He knew he was to blame.
Yeah.
Wayne fully admits the last time he had contact with Sarah was just hours before her body was found.
He said straight up that he had been at his ex-wife's home earlier that day in the early morning hours.
What time exactly?
Around 1, 2 o'clock. I went over there to talk to my son. My oldest, he's 17. He stays up late.
Wayne says he didn't intend to wake up the rest of the household, but things didn't go as planned.
Wayne told detectives that the family's dog woke Sarah up, and she wasn't very happy about it.
Wayne, what are you doing here? Do you know what time it is?
Sorry, I wasn't thinking.
Wayne doesn't deny the squabble, but is adamant he had nothing to do with Sarah's death.
Wayne says that he went home after the fight and he hasn't seen Sarah since.
Can anybody vouch for you?
Sure, my son can. He was there.
That afternoon, detectives sit down with the couple's son. The 17-year-old is still processing the news of his mother's murder.
Dwayne Jr. was really in a tough situation. His mother's dead, and he's talking to law enforcement about what he had seen in the early morning hours.
They obviously wanted to know the dynamic of what was going on because it puts everything in context.
The distraught teen does his best to tell detectives about everything he witnessed that morning.
Dwayne Jr. just laid it out, what happened.
Wayne and Sarah's son essentially confirmed what his father had told detectives about going over to the house.
Diesel, hush!
My brother told me, like, Diesel was barking up a storm.
When he looked out the window, he had noticed his father walking up the sidewalk. So he opened the door.
Yeah, my mom walked in. She was pretty upset. And they got into a heated argument. And things got pretty intense.
My mom told him that he needed to go. And my dad wasn't trying to hear that.
I just want to talk.
Dad, it's okay.
Don't you start.
His dad told him you need to butt out. This is your business.
The couple's son says his father did leave, but not without a fight.
Listen, I cannot have you coming around here at 2 in the morning. I gotta go to work.
Well, go to bed then. Go on.
I'm about to call the police. Go.
She threatened to call 911.
Hello?
That's when my dad pushed my mom down. He took her phone.
Stop, Wayne, stop!
It was the phone that she had for work, and he left.
Wait, she talked to the police? She tried, but he took the phone and left.
After talking to the couple's son, detectives contact the Volusia County Sheriff's Department, the precinct in Sarah's hometown of Deltona.
She made 3 phone calls to 911 trying to get them there because of what was going on.
The first of the calls lines up with what Sarah's son described to detectives.
You could clearly hear Sarah saying, "Stop, Wayne. I'm calling the police."
The next 2 calls came a few minutes later from a different number.
She took Dwayne Jr.'s phone and proceeded to call the sheriff's department.
Sarah was able to explain to the 911 dispatch operator that her husband had taken her cell phone and left.
My mom was on call for work, so she really needed that phone.
By the time deputies arrived, Wayne was long gone. However, the 911 recordings do produce an interesting piece of information.
Apparently, Wayne hadn't really come over to talk to his son. That was just an excuse.
I don't know what he was thinking about coming over here at 2 in the morning talking about, baby, I need you.
It sounded like, from what Sarah was saying, Wayne was begging her to take him back.
Even though he had a girlfriend, Allison, he seemed to indicate that he was trying to put his family back together.
Obviously, that made them a bit more suspicious of Wayne since he left this out of his initial statement.
But it also puts someone else on detectives' radar.
Now detectives want to know, had Allison somehow gotten wind of Wayne's attempt at reconciliation? Hey!
This might have triggered her to perhaps become jealous or upset.
If there was a love triangle going on, it may have gone very wrong.
Detectives have just learned that hours before 42-year-old Sarah Rucker was found murdered, the mother of 4 had an altercation with her estranged husband, Wayne White.
Several hours before Sarah Rucker was killed, she had placed a call to 911 about her husband. He had shown up at her residence and an argument had taken place.
In the 911 call, Sarah told the operator that they were arguing, partly because Wayne wanted to get back together with her.
The 911 call paints Wayne as a possible suspect, but detectives also wonder about Wayne's current girlfriend, 37-year-old Allison Cartwright.
Jealousy is a powerful motivating factor, and so they were concerned that with Wayne seeking to reconcile, that if Allison somehow had knowledge of that, that could have been a motive for her to try to kill Sarah Rucker.
On August 30th, barely 24 hours after Sarah's murder, detectives bring Allison in for questioning.
So, what was your relationship like with Sarah?
I was living with her husband, so we weren't exactly friends.
Allison admits to the police that she and Sarah didn't get along at all.
However, according to Allison, that doesn't make her a killer.
Allison was pretty straight up that she had no love for Sarah Rucker, but that she didn't have any anger or hatred toward her that would have led her to kill her.
So did it bother you that Wayne wanted to get back together with her?
What would give you that idea?
Allison said that she had no knowledge of any attempts to reconcile between Wayne and his ex-wife.
That's what Sarah said.
Well, Sarah's lying. The only reason why she and Wayne didn't divorce was because of the kids.
The detectives couldn't help but notice that Allison did sound more than a little touchy about Sarah.
They're not convinced yet that she's being totally forthcoming with them.
Where were you last night?
I was at home.
Can anyone confirm that?
Yes. Wayne was there.
Allison gave police an alibi that she had been home all evening with Wayne.
Allison says, I didn't have anything to do with this.
But at this point, Allison and Wayne just had each other as alibis, and that was not strong enough.
But for the moment, there's nothing for them to hold Allison on.
They thought they might have had a motive, but they really did not have enough concrete evidence to actually charge Allison with the murder.
Later that day, detectives received Sarah's autopsy reports.
The official cause of death was multiple stab wounds and cut wounds to her neck.
She died from loss of blood due to having her throat slit. There was at least 11 slash wounds into the major arteries.
The most severe cut was 6.5 inches long, 2 inches wide, and it severed her esophagus and carotid artery.
The depth of the cuts also gives detectives clues about the nature of the attack on Sarah.
They determined that the murder weapon was more than likely a pocket knife. And this led investigators to believe that this was not a planned murder.
The results of Sarah's autopsy also reveal she hadn't been sexually assaulted either.
She'd been found naked from the waist down, but now it seemed that this was something her killer staged to try and throw detectives off track.
To detectives, this all suggests Sarah likely knew her killer.
Stranger type situations don't typically lead into that type of injuries with a victim of a stabbing.
When you look at the types of injuries that Sarah Rucker had on her neck, it was pretty clear that someone was extremely angry with her.
Police believe they have the suspect list narrowed down to 2 people.
Law enforcement at that point faced the dilemma of trying to figure out whether it was Allison or Wayne.
Either Wayne was enraged that Sarah rejected his attempt at reconciliation, or Allison killed Sarah out of jealousy.
Either way, the murder had been preceded by a vicious struggle.
It was pretty clear also from the autopsy that Sarah had tried to put up a fight. There were some superficial cuts to her hands and to her arms.
But does this point toward Wayne? Or does the fact that Sarah was able to fight for so long point to the fact that Allison could have been wielding the knife?
Hoping for clues that could point to the killer, detectives dig into both Wayne and Allison's police records.
Police look into Allison's background and they can't find a history of violence.
But when the detectives pull Wayne's rap sheet, it stops them in their tracks.
His criminal history tended to show that he had a propensity of violence.
This is a violent man.
Maybe those old demons rose again.
Detectives investigating the murder of 42-year-old Sarah Rucker have just uncovered that her estranged husband, Wayne White, has a checkered past.
When they look into Wayne's background, they realize that he has a track record of violent attacks.
Dwayne had committed an aggravated battery. He also had a couple aggravated assault cases.
The first incident of domestic violence was when she was pregnant with their first child, and Wayne hit her across the head with a wine bottle.
Though Sarah had reported the incident, she'd also decided to give Wayne a second chance.
She took him back, but then he did it again and again for years.
Through the years, there were numerous incidents where Sarah would call law enforcement after Wayne had struck or hurt her.
Sitting down with Sarah's family, detectives learn more about the cycle of abuse.
It'll be good for a little bit, and then it'll be another fight.
One time he put a gun to her before. He strangled her one time. I came home from school and she had like abrasions on her neck. It was taking its toll on my mom mentally and physically.
Honestly, I don't know how she did it. Kept a brave face for that long.
We came out of a broken family, so I guess she didn't want a family like that.
She just didn't want to have us grow up without a dad.
In fact, Sarah's family reveals that Sarah could have called the police far more than she did.
My mom tried to avoid calling 911. She was a really private person. So she didn't want, the police officers showing up at the house and the neighbors seeing everything going on.
But I guess she just couldn't take it anymore.
My mom never told me that, I said he had to go. It's like they were arguing really bad, and then my dad left for a couple of days, and he came with a friend and took the TVs off the wall, and that was it. As far as me and my siblings knew, it was just, all right, I guess that was the big one, the big fight that made them really just go separate ways.
Though according to Sarah's loved ones, it wasn't the end of Wayne's harassment.
Sarah, open the door! He'd show up drunk or whatever, all times of the day and night, expect her to just come out and talk with him, do whatever. Sarah, open the door now!
He would come and just creep into the house sometimes.
Combing through his record, investigators stumble upon one incident in February of 2011, some 6 months before her murder, that sends chills down their spines.
Wayne had grabbed her as she sat in the vehicle, choking her around the neck.
I don't know what happened. I just saw the marks on her neck.
After that incident, a warrant was issued for Wayne's arrest.
That warrant had never been served, though.
Volusia County had been trying to catch him, and they had not been able to do so.
Wayne was able to avoid capture, largely because he lived in a different jurisdiction.
Every time she calls, Dwayne hops on I-4 and gone. He's out of the county.
I did feel let down because the police show up after my dad's already halfway to Orlando. And that's happened time and time again.
Detectives are determined to prevent Wayne from harming anyone else. There's just one problem.
According to Sarah's 911 call, her son and the cops that showed up at her house that night, Wayne left after his fight with Sarah.
How did Sarah end up dead a few hours later and 20 miles away?
Hoping to learn more about that night, police issue a warrant for the family's cell phone records.
Crime scene techs were able to track the locations of the cell phones for both Wayne, Dwayne Jr., as well as his ex-wife, Sarah Rucker. And they were able to see exactly where all three phones had gone during the course of the early morning hours of August 29th.
As he told detectives, it does appear that Wayne had gone home after the fight.
We see his phone traveling out of Deltona all the way down to near his home in Orlando.
The records also appear to confirm that Wayne had taken Sarah's phone.
The cell phone records showed that Sarah's phone arrived at Wayne's girlfriend's house, Allison's house, at about 2:47 a.m.
However, according to the phone records, Sarah had called Wayne 45 minutes later using her son's phone.
Around 3:32 a.m., Wayne's phone got a call from Dwayne Jr.'s phone, which we know was in Sarah's possession.
The call lasted for 9 minutes.
The investigators believe that Sarah may have been trying to convince Wayne to return her phone.
Sarah really needed this cell phone for work, so she was really desperate to get it back.
After that call, cell towers track Wayne's phone leaving Orlando and heading toward the Longwood exit off Interstate 4.
We also got the same type of records with Dwayne Jr.'s phone, and it's showing it going to that same location.
Around 3:46 a.m., Wayne's phone is in the area of the sandwich shop where Sarah Rucker's body would ultimately be found.
According to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1 in 4 women in the United States have been the victim of severe physical violence by an intimate partner. In nearly 80% of all domestic violence cases, victims who report abuse have been previously attacked by the same offender. August 31st, 2011. It's been 48 hours since Sarah Rucker's body was discovered outside a Longwood, Florida restaurant. Detectives believe they have finally identified her killer, Sarah's estranged husband, Wayne White.
When they pulled their records, detectives learned that Wayne and Sarah had met up at the scene of the crime roughly an hour before the murder.
This is really the turning point of the investigation.
Detectives waste no time bringing Wayne in for a second interview.
So they brought him in to the station to confront him with all of the information they had.
So we had some things come up since we last talked.
And as before, Wayne seemed more than willing to cooperate with investigators.
Detectives asked him if he had taken her phone, and he said yes.
Why?
I wanted to see who she was talking to. You know, some of those guys, I don't trust around my kids.
Wayne tells investigators that Sarah has been texting several other guys. Wayne indicated to law enforcement that text messages that she had exchanged with other guys seemed to indicate to him that there was some type of arguments going on.
Given what detectives know about Wayne's abuse towards Sarah, they're suspicious of his concern.
So what'd you do with the phone? I threw it away. I got mad when I saw the text. I tossed it out the window while I was driving home.
You sure about that?
The cell phone record, you see him traveling back into Seminole County and her traveling from Volusia County to where they end up in the same location.
We know you met her in Longwood.
No.
So were you planning to kill her, or did it just happen?
I'm more a lawyer.
That was when he said he didn't want to talk anymore.
With the interview over, detectives take Wayne into custody.
When I officially found out that he had been arrested and charged with the murder, it was like it all just clicked. Nobody else would want to do that to my mom except for him.
Officials are confident they've got the right man. But is it enough to secure a conviction?
The case is still what we would consider a circumstantial case.
You're trying to stress that it's impossible that somebody else did this.
On October 20th, 2014, Wayne's trial gets underway. However, it's clear from the beginning that prosecutors will have an uphill battle on their hands.
There wasn't an eyewitness. There was no murder weapon. It was not necessarily the strongest case that I've ever seen.
Though in their opening statements, prosecutors argue that what they do have should be more than enough.
He had the means, motive, opportunity to commit the crime. All these factors point to him, and there's no factors that point to anybody else. And therefore, it must be him.
The proof, according to the prosecution, lies in both Wayne and Sarah's phone records.
She was on call, and she needs to answer the phone and be able to go and to perform her duties as needed by the hospital.
Wayne, it's me. You know I need that phone.
I just got home. I can meet you somewhere.
Wayne had used Sarah's cell phone as bait to lure her away from her home.
He, I guess, told her where to meet.
Once they were in that parking lot, they started arguing again, and then another fight ensued.
I'm tired of this crap, Wayne. Give it to me.
Why you always giving me a hard time? Why you always giving me a hard time?
Give me the phone back.
You always giving me a hard time.
Give it to me.
The defensive wounds found on Sarah's hands also gave investigators a clue as to the type of weapon used: a pocket knife.
She eventually was overcome. What happened with her pants and all that, I don't know. That's always been a mystery. I know law enforcement felt that he did that to debase her.
He may have also been trying to make her murder look like it was the result of a sexual assault.
Prosecutors assert that once Sarah was dead, Wayne left her there and drove home. When it's the defense's turn, Wayne takes the stand to give his own account of what occurred that night.
It was very surreal. He turned to me and mouthed, "I love you."
Then he stuns the court with a shocking admission.
He admits that he was planning to meet with Sarah at the sandwich shop, that he had gone to the restaurant to give Sarah her phone back.
Though Wayne claims that when he got there, he made a horrifying discovery.
He tried to say that when he got to my mom, she was already dead.
He said, I came there to meet with her and I found her body and then I got scared.
His concern was that because there had been the prior argument, because of the fact that he had had prior arrests for domestic violence, that no one would believe that it wasn't him.
According to the defense, things had played out exactly as Wayne had predicted.
The defense attorney argues that Wayne was unfairly targeted by the police.
However, it's an argument that ultimately falls flat with the jury.
He was found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder.
As a result, Wayne will be spending the rest of his life in prison.
He won't be kidnapped. He will die here.
I did want him to be in prison forever. He took our innocence. Like, we had to grow up super fast when he took my mom. There's just so much stuff that we needed her here for, that any child would need their mother for, and we just didn't have it.
However, despite the tragic loss, Sarah's children have thrived.
The oldest daughter graduated from college. She's a pharmacist now. The oldest son, he played football and he was in the Coast Guard.
Though for all their success, not a day goes by without them thinking of their mother and all that she meant to them.
There's plenty of things that I wish I could tell my mom or show my mom, or, you know, like, I wonder what type of grandmother she would be to my son. I want everyone to know that Sarah Yvonne Rucker was just an all-around awesome person who would do anything for anyone in need, that she loved her children. She would do anything for us.
Abuse is never okay. If you or someone you love is in an abusive relationship, there is help available. Call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. He was a young man with big plans for the future.
International banking. That was his goal. Anything he was focused on, he was gonna accomplish it.
But his plans took a tragic and mysterious turn.
It looks like a body.
There was a plastic bag found around the head. He was wrapped in a blanket and left in this hotel room.
The truth behind his death will reveal just how far some people will go when the bonds of love are put to the test.
He was spiraling down into this out-of-control lifestyle where it ultimately leads to his murder.
You want to keep an eye out for those in the person's life that might have that sort of rage inside of them.
I don't think he fully understood the type of person that he was getting involved with.
I've been a criminal for a long time. He was just kind of head over heels for him.
He was the type of person to feel like he would probably save people, try to change them to be a better person.
You kind of turn a blind eye to the dangers.
January 31st, 2015, 12 p.m. It's a typical Saturday afternoon in the bustling city of Atlanta,
series of unpaid bills and a black BMW that was likely 100 miles away. Phil looked out the window at the Bloomington Square. He realized that Brankel's greatest trick wasn't the fake mustaches or the stolen plates. It was the way he reflected back at people exactly who they wanted to be. Phil looked down at his hands. They were shaking. He didn't know how to tell Bonnie that their brilliant consultant was a ghost who had haunted their kindness. Chapter 38. High stakes on the I-70. The rain was lashing against the windshield as David Brankel pulled the BMW into a rest stop along the I-70 near Blue Ash, Ohio. Donna was asleep in the passenger seat, her head tilted at an awkward angle. On the floorboard between her feet was a duffel bag containing $1,000 from a hit in Indianapolis. It was supposed to be a clean hit, but for the first time in 30 bank robberies, Brankel felt a prickle of genuine fear. The teller hadn't been scared. She had been angry. "Is this some kind of joke?" she had asked, looking at the note. Brankel had leaned in, the boonie hat shadowing his eyes. "Go home alive," he had hissed, the scripted line feeling suddenly thin. He checked his fake mustache in the rearview mirror. It was peeling at the edges from the humidity. He looked at the interstate, the river of light and asphalt that had been his sanctuary. He felt like the river was starting to dry up. He had 43 robberies under his belt. He was the IBM bandit. He was a legend in the precinct houses of 3 states. But a legend is no place to hide. He looked at Donna. She deserved a better man, he thought. But a better man wouldn't have the guts to do what he did. "David." Donna stirred, her voice thick with sleep. "Where are we?" "Almost home," Brankel lied. He shifted the car into drive. He didn't know where home was anymore. Only the next interchange. Chapter 39. The Laboratory of Lies. Gerald Barnbaum's clinic was a master class in psychological warfare. He didn't just have a stethoscope. He had the right pens. He had the right medical journals on his desk, bookmarked with yellow sticky notes as if he were mid-study. He had a way of leaning back in his chair and rubbing his chin that suggested deep, academic contemplation. "You have a slight murmur, Mrs. Henderson," he would say, his voice a perfect blend of concern and reassurance. "Nothing to worry about today, but let's keep an eye on it. I want you on a low-sodium diet. I'll write you a referral for a specialist in Los Angeles." He never wrote the referral. He knew that by the time the patient followed up, he would likely be at a different clinic under a different name. His genius was in the administrative gaps. He knew that medical boards were slow to update their databases. He knew that background check companies often relied on the candidate to provide the contact information for their references. He had a network of burner phones and colleagues, fellow cons, or people he'd manipulated who would verify his brilliance. Dr. Barnes. "Oh, he's the best diagnostic mind I've ever worked with," a voice would say over a static-filled line. Barnbaum was a virus that had learned to bypass the immune system of the medical establishment. He didn't just pretend to be a doctor, he became the doctor that the system wanted: productive, efficient, and well-liked. He sat in his office at the North Hollywood Clinic, looking at the framed license he had stolen. He felt a surge of pride. He had outperformed the real Dr. Barnes in every way that mattered to the billing department. "I'm the one they want," he whispered. "I'm the one they need." Chapter 40, The Final Reckoning to 004. The silence in the federal courtroom was absolute as the judge prepared to read the restitution order for David Brankel. Brankel stood in the well of the court, his hands cuffed, his gaze fixed on a small crack in the mahogany paneling. He looked smaller than he had in the surveillance videos. The boonie hat was gone, replaced by a thinning crown of gray hair. $175,000, the judge read. Brankel felt a cold, hollow laugh in his chest. $175,000. He had spent that much on BMW repairs and designer suits in a single year. The money was gone, vaporized into the interstates and the motel rooms of the Midwest. He looked back at the gallery. The Sperrys weren't there. The Logans weren't there. To them, David Brankel wasn't a criminal to be confronted. He was a natural disaster that had passed through their lives. They were busy rebuilding, too tired to watch him receive a sentence for crimes that didn't even include their losses. "I didn't rip them off," Brankel muttered to his lawyer. "I did legitimate work for them." He truly believed it. In the distorted theater of his mind, the consulting he did for the Logans was worth every penny of the $5,500 he'd scanned. The fact that the Great Escape was a pile of useless blueprints didn't matter. He had given them the feeling of success. And to Brankel, that was the most valuable commodity in the world. As he was led out of the courtroom to begin his 21-year stretch, he passed a window. He could see the I-64 stretching out toward the horizon. "I was good," he whispered to the glass. "I was the best there ever was." But as the heavy steel doors of the transport van slammed shut, the only thing left of the IBM Bandit was a dropped wallet and a long, empty road. Chapter 41, The Aftermath of the BMW. Donna Hewins sat on her porch in Blue Ash, watching the traffic compassed on the highway. It had been years since she was the anchor for a man who robbed banks, but the sound of a high-speed engine still made her breath hitch. She was on probation now, her Bonnie and Clyde fantasy replaced by the reality of house arrest and a community that looked at her with a mix of pity and suspicion. She thought about the duffel bags of cash, the fake mustaches, and the constant, electric hum of the police scanner. It wasn't a game, she whispered to the empty air. She realized now that she hadn't been a partner. She had been a prop. Brankel hadn't loved her. He had loved the convenience of her devotion. He had used her as a getaway driver for his ego. Donna looked at her hands. They were steady now. But she knew the vibration of the black BMW would never truly leave her bones. She had wasted the best years of her life chasing a man who was only chasing himself. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, she realized the interstate didn't lead to a new life. It just led back to the same empty road. Chapter 42. The Fingerprint of a Ghost. The embarrassment at the FBI headquarters wasn't something that could be wiped away with a press release. 100 special agents, the elite investigators of the nation, had been physically examined by a man who had learned his craft from a textbook in a prison cell. We missed everything, Special Agent Murray Konjovsky said, staring at the updated vetting protocols on her screen. We checked the license, but we didn't check the man. The Bureau had changed everything. Now, every medical contractor had to undergo a multi-layered background check, including live fingerprinting and a direct verification from the medical school. They had closed the Barnbaum loophole, but the cost had been their own reputation. Marie looked at the file for Gerald Barnbaum. He was a ghost who had left his fingerprints on the very heart of the law. He had shown them that the more official a mask looks, the less people question what's behind it. He wasn't a doctor, she muttered. He was a mirror. He showed us the version of security we wanted to believe in. And as she closed the file, she knew that somewhere out there, another imposter was watching them, learning from Barnbaum's mistakes, waiting for the next crack in the wall. Chapter 43. The Real Doctor's Reflection. In Stockton, the real Dr. Gerald Barnes was finally retiring. He handed over his practice to a young surgeon, a man who had never heard of Gerald Barnbaum or the imposter doctor. Barnes sat in his garden, a book in his lap, trying to enjoy the silence. But the silence felt fragile. Even now, decades later, a Google search for his name still brought up the mugshots of the man who had stolen his identity. I am the real one, he would tell himself like a mantra. He thought about the family of John Mackenzie. He thought about the Logans and the Sperrys. He realized that Barnbaum hadn't just stolen his name. He had turned it into a weapon that had wounded people Barnes would never meet. He was a healer whose name had been used to kill. I won't let him win, Barnes said, looking at the sunset. But as the shadows lengthened, he knew that his legacy would always be twin-tracked, half of it built on the bones he had mended, and the other half built on the lives the imposter had destroyed. He was a doctor, and he was a ghost, and in the architecture of deceit, they were forever linked. Chapter 44. The Last Audition. Gerald Barnbaum was 80 years old now, sitting in a wheelchair in the infirmary of the federal prison in Minnesota. His hair was a thin, snowy halo, and his eyes were clouded by cataracts. But when a new inmate came in with a cough, Barnbaum's back straightened. The physician's gaze returned. "It's a bronchial congestion, son," he said, his voice a gravelly echo of the charm that had fooled thousands. "Take deep breaths. I'll have the nurse bring you some expectorant." The other inmates still called him Doc. They didn't care about the Medicaid fraud or the identity theft. They only cared that in a place where they were just numbers, he looked at them like they were patients. Barnbaum smiled to himself as the inmate nodded and left. It was his final stage. He had no more licenses to forge, no more clinics to lead, but he still had the mask. He was a thespian who had outlived his play, yet he refused to leave the theater. I was a god, he whispered to the whitewashed walls. He didn't think about the syrupy blood of John Mackenzie or the ruined savings of the Logans. He only thought about the next consultation. He was an actor who had forgotten his real name. And in the end, that was his greatest victory and his greatest tragedy. Chapter 45, The Architecture of Truth. Why do we believe? The architecture of deceit isn't built by the liar alone. It is a collaborative effort between the performer and the audience. We want the doctor to be brilliant. We want the businessman to be successful. We want the interstate to lead somewhere better. Barnbaum and Brankel weren't just criminals. They were experts in human longing. They filled the holes in our systems and our souls with beautiful, high-quality lies. The white coat is a symbol of trust. The black BMW is a symbol of achievement. When we see the symbols, we stop looking for the truth. Justice was eventually served, the prison doors locked, and the restitution orders were filed. But the ruins of the deceit remain in the hearts of those who trusted. The Logans will always look at a business brochure with suspicion. The Mackenzies will always fear the word dizzy. And as the sun sets over the interstates of America and the clinic lights flicker on for the night shift, we are reminded that the truth is often less attractive than the mask. The play is over. The road is dark. But keep your eyes open, because somewhere, someone is practicing a gaze, checking a mustache, and waiting for you to believe. End of Part 1. The Prophets of Deception, a novel based on true events. Prologue, The Cost of a Dream. The American dream is often described as a ladder, but for men like Stephen Warshak and Kirk Wright, it was more of a mirror reflection of what they lacked and a distorted vision of what they could become. One built his empire on the biological insecurities of the common man, the other on the gilded trust of the elite. In the humid basements of Cincinnati and the high-rise glass towers of Atlanta, millions of dollars flowed like water. But water has a way of finding the cracks. And when the cracks widened, the smiles faded, the accounts emptied, and the only thing left was the cold, hard reality of the law. Part 1. The Architect of Smiles. Chapter 1, The Basement Apothecary. Cincinnati, 1996. The air in the basement was thick with the scent of stale coffee and the ozone of a struggling air conditioner. Stephen Warshak, then 31, watched his mother, Sue, hunched over a rotary phone. She was writing down credit card numbers on a yellow legal pad, her handwriting neat and deliberate. "Yes, sir," Sue said, her voice patient and maternal. "Berkeley Nutraceuticals. It's a once daily supplement. We'll have it out to you by Monday." Stephen paced the small room. To an outsider, it looked like a pathetic shoestring operation. To Stephen, it was the womb of a titan. He didn't see a basement. He saw a laboratory of human psychology. He realized early on that people weren't just buying pills, they were buying a version of themselves they had lost or perhaps a version they never had. How many today? Ma, Stephen asked as she hung up. 42 orders, Steve. All from the back of the magazines. Stephen nodded. He had spent his last cent placing tiny, tasteless ads in the back of Playboy, Penthouse, and various hunting journals. The claims were over the top, borderline absurd, but the phones didn't stop ringing. We need a name, Stephen muttered. Something that sounds established, clinical, trustworthy. You chose Berkeley, Sue reminded him. No, for the product, the big one, the one that's going to take us out of this basement. He looked at a sketch on his desk, a crude drawing of a man with a wide, toothy grin. He wanted a symbol of happiness that was almost unsettling. A man who knew a secret that no one else did. Smiling Bob, he whispered, "The man who has it all." Chapter 2, The Birth of an Icon. By 2001, the shoestring operation had mutated. Berkeley Premium Nutraceuticals was no longer a basement secret. It was a juggernaut. Stephen had moved the company into a sleek corporate headquarters, but the spirit of the basement remained a relentless, hungry drive for more. The Smiling Bob campaign was his masterpiece. Warshak didn't just buy ad space. He bought time on major cable networks, placing his supplements alongside legitimate pharmaceuticals like Viagra. It was a brilliant piece of camouflage. If a man saw a commercial on a reputable channel, he assumed the product was reputable too. The commercials were masterpieces of innuendo. Bob was always there, leaning against a white picket fence or holding a barbecue spatula, wearing a grin that suggested he was the most satisfied man on the planet. He didn't have to say a word about male enhancement. The wagging eyebrows of his neighbors and the satisfied glow of his wife told the story. It's about self-esteem, Stephen told his marketing team during a high-stakes meeting. We aren't selling blood flow. We're selling the feeling a man gets when he walks into a room and knows he's the alpha. Bob is that feeling. Behind the scenes, Warshak was plowing millions back into advertising. He was a shark that had to keep swimming or die. The revenue was nearing $250 million, but the overhead was astronomical. He needed a way to ensure that once a customer was hooked, they stayed hooked whether they wanted to or not. Chapter 3, The Call Center Grind. John Bradley, a new hire in the call center, felt the energy the moment he walked in. It was electric, fueled by commissions and the relentless ringing of phones. The walls were covered in motivational posters, but the atmosphere was anything but wholesome. "Listen up," his supervisor yelled over the din. "If they call for the free sample, you get their card, you tell them about the shipping. But you don't spend too much time on the continuity part. It's in the script. But keep it moving. Speed is profit." John sat at his desk, staring at the script. It was a masterpiece of linguistic trickery. The continuity program was the lifeblood Rorschach spoke of in his internal emails. It meant that once a customer received a free sample, they were automatically enrolled in a monthly billing cycle. Everything lights up when a new ad airs, John noticed. The phones would ring in a deafening chorus. He took his first call. It was an elderly man from Florida, sounding hopeful. I saw the man on the TV. Bob. I'd like to try what he's having. John felt a pang of guilt. He knew the free sample would lead to a $120 charge the following month, and every month after that. The script forced him to gloss over the cancellation policy, a policy designed to be a labyrinth. Chapter 4, The Price of Disappointment. One of the first victims to truly push back was Ryan. He was a regular guy who had seen the ads and felt the familiar tug of curiosity. $1 for 100 for an 8-month supply felt like a steep price, but the W or money back guarantee was the safety net that caught him. 3 weeks in, Ryan felt nothing. No change. No smiling Bob glow. Then the credit card statement arrived. Not only had he paid the $400, but there was an additional charge of $120. He called the number on the bottle. I paid in full. Ryan told the customer service rep. Why am I being charged again? That's for your next shipment. Sir, you're on the continuity program. I never signed up for that. And the first shipment was incomplete anyway. I want to cancel, and I want my refund. The rep followed the retention script. Well, sir, these things take time to process. It could be a few weeks. Perhaps you should try the product for another month. Most men see results in the second phase. Ryan waited, and called, and waited. For 6 months, he fought a war of attrition with Berkeley. When he finally demanded his W or money back refund, he was met with the ultimate roadblock. To process that, sir, we need a notarized letter from your physician. It must state, in clinical detail, that the product failed to produce the promised physical growth. Ryan stared at the phone. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. Rorschach had bet on the idea that no man would ever humiliate himself in front of a doctor and a notary for a few $100. It was a tax on pride. Chapter 5, The Female Factor. In Michigan, Ellie Price was facing a different kind of silence. After her surgery, her body felt like a foreign country. She missed the intimacy she shared with her husband, Bob. When she heard the radio ad for Avlamio, Berkeley's female libido booster, it sounded like an olive branch. They just need the card for shipping, Ellie told Bob. But within 2 months, the shipping had turned into a $30 a month drain. Ellie tried to call. She was put on hold until the music became a haunting loop in her head. She was told to speak to Michael Johnson, the vice president of customer service. He's in a meeting, they would say. He's out for the day, they would say. Eventually, Bob Price took over. He was a man of straightforward principles. He called Berkeley, his voice booming with a quiet, dangerous calm. I want to speak to Michael Johnson. Now, I'm sorry, sir. Mr. Johnson is unavailable. Listen to me, Bob said. My wife is a good woman. She's going through a hard time, and you people are preying on her. You stop these charges, or I'm coming down there. The line went quiet. There was no Michael Johnson. He was a fiction, a name on a door that didn't exist, designed to absorb the anger of thousands of Bobs and Ellies across the country. Part 2, The Gridiron Gambit. Chapter 6, The Harvard Hedge. While Rorschach was building his empire on pills, Kirk Wright was building his on prestige. Kirk was the definition of a self-made man. Raised in the Bronx, he had used a settlement from a car accident at age 20 to fund his education. He didn't just go to college, he conquered Harvard. He walked with a confidence that suggested he belonged in the highest rooms of power. When he moved to Atlanta, he saw a city in transition. It was the southern boomtown, a place where new money was looking for a home. Wright founded International Management Associates EMA and marketed himself as the sophisticated alternative to traditional Wall Street. The tourist fund isn't for everyone, Kirk would say at private dinners, swirling a glass of 25-year-old Macallan. It's for those who understand that the market isn't a gamble, it's a math problem. And I have the solution. He was charming, articulate, and most importantly, he looked the part. He was a young, successful African-American professional in a world that was still largely a boys' club. People wanted him to succeed. They wanted to be part of his story. Chapter 7, The Locker Room Virus. The breakthrough for EMA came when Kirk Wright met Steve Atwater. Atwater was a legend, a hard-hitting safety for the Denver Broncos with 2 Super Bowl rings. He was the kind of man other players looked up to. I've looked at your returns, Kirk, Atwater said during their first meeting. 20%. That's unheard of. It's about margin calls and short sales, Steve. Terms that sound scary, but in the right hands, they're just tools. I manage the risk so you don't have to. Atwater invested. And then he did something even more valuable. He brought his friends. Suddenly, the EMA roster was a who's who of retired NFL stars. These were men who had earned millions in short, brutal careers. They were terrified of going broke. They wanted safety. Wright gave them the opposite, wrapped in a beautiful, gilded lie. He was one of us, one player would later say. Or so we thought. He talked like us. He loved the game. And he made us feel like our money was finally working as hard as we did on the field. Part 3, The Collapse. Chapter 8, 7 Tons of Truth. March 16, 2005. The dawn was cold in Cincinnati when the federal convoy arrived at Berkeley headquarters. 50 agents, some with sidearms visible, moved with military precision. They didn't just take the files, they took the servers. They took 24 laptops. They even took the unopened mail. By the time they were done, 7 tons of evidence were being hauled away in boxes. Stephen Warshak watched from his glass office. He didn't look like Smiling Bob anymore. He looked like a man who had suddenly realized that the creative thinking he had pioneered was about to become his indictment. The agents found the emails. They found the grandma's purse email, where Warshak explicitly stated he didn't care where the money came from, as long as the card was good. They found the fish in a barrel email from his nephew. The student had indeed become the teacher, and the teacher was going to prison. Chapter 9, The Pool at the Ritz. In Atlanta, Kirk Wright was feeling the heat. The NFL players were no longer satisfied with timing issues. They wanted their cash. On February 17, 2006, the players went to court. The judge quickly froze IMAS assets. Wright fled. He stayed at the Ritz-Carlton on South Beach. He spent his days by the pool, sipping cocktails and giving interviews to the Wall Street Journal on throwaway phones. "I'm not a fugitive," he told the reporter, his voice calm, almost detached. "I'm just protecting myself. The players are mad, and they're big guys. I need to be careful." When the FBI finally walked up to his poolside lounge chair, he didn't look surprised. He looked almost relieved. The game of mirrors had finally reached its end. Chapter 10, The Paper Trail. The forensic accountants who descended on IMAS offices were prepared for a complex shell game. What they found was surprisingly crude. He didn't even try to hide it in the later years. One investigator said, "The $150 million wasn't lost in bad trades. It was just gone. It went to the cars, the house, the wedding, and to paying back the investors who screamed the loudest." They tracked the money through dozens of accounts. It was a classic Ponzi structure. The Taurus Fund existed only on paper. The 20% returns were nothing more than digits typed into a spreadsheet by a man who had graduated from Harvard but forgotten the most basic rule of mathematics. You cannot subtract $150 million and still have an empire. Chapter 11, The Final Exit. Stephen Warshak was sentenced to 25 years. He had preyed on insecurities, and the judge made sure he paid the price. Smiling Bob was a ghost of the past, replaced by the reality of a federal cell. Warshak's mother and sister were not spared. The family business was dismantled, piece by piece, under the weight of a 112-count indictment. The dinner table was empty. Kirk Wright didn't wait for his sentencing. 3 days after his conviction in May 2008, he stood in his cell. He had lost everything: the Harvard prestige, the NFL friendships, the gold faucets. He took a bedsheet, tied it to the top bunk, and made his final exit. Chapter 12, The Ghost of the Gridiron. In Denver, Steve Atwater sat in his study, the Super Bowl rings on his mantle mocking him with their luster. The news of Wright's suicide had ripped through the NFL community like a wildfire. It wasn't just the loss of money, it was the loss of hope. He took the easy way out. Atwater told a group of former teammates gathered on a conference call, He left us with the wreckage while he just checked out. The legacy of Kirk Wright wasn't just a $150 million hole in the ground. It was a trail of broken families and shattered trust that no forensic accountant could ever fully quantify. Chapter 13, The Phoenix from the Ashes. While the Warshak family sat in federal prison, the product they had built refused to die. Enzyte was a valuable asset in the eyes of the corporate world. It didn't matter that the marketing was a scam. The name had brand equity. A company called Beyonda purchased the rights to Enzyte, scrubbed the illegal billing practices, and put Bob back on the air. He's still smiling, Ryan said, watching a new commercial. Only now, the hands behind him aren't in Cincinnati anymore. Chapter 14, The Digital Skeletons. Agent Marcus Vance was still digging through the 13,500 documents seized from Berkeley. He found things that never made it into the main trial digital skeletons that spoke of a culture of absolute contempt for the customer. Tell him it's part of the natural enhancement of his lifestyle. One leader had typed in a chat log, "Less medicine, more Bob." The level of sociopathy was staggering. It wasn't just a business that had grown too fast. It was a kingdom built on the delight of exploitation. Chapter 15, The Auction of Vanities. The liquidation of Kirk Wright's estate was a public event. The Bentley, the Lamborghini, the house itself sold off piece by piece. I got a check for $300. Calvin Paris said, "I gave that man my life savings, my house, my peace, and the government sends me $300. Chapter 16, The Reckoning of the Matriarch. So Warshak sat in her cell, her hands gnarled with age and the memory of the basement. He was always so bright, she told the prison chaplain. He just wanted everyone to be happy, like Bob. But happiness isn't something you can steal from others to give to yourself. Chapter 17, The Long Road Back. For Bob and Ellie Price, the end of the trial didn't bring back the money, but it brought back a sense of justice. Ryan, too, found a strange kind of peace. But the funny money had changed the world. As the sun set over the Georgia Dome, the smiles of Bob remained on the screens of millions, a reminder that in the world of American greed, the only thing more addictive than the product is the lie that sells it. Chapter 18, The Cayman Ghosts. While Stephen Warshak was being fitted for a jumpsuit, federal agents were hunting for the shadow millions. They knew about the $100 million in revenue, but the trail to the personal caches was cold, buried under layers of Caribbean shell companies. IRS Special Agent Elena Vance stared at a screen in a windowless room in D.C. She was looking at a series of wire transfers that made no sense random amounts. $16, $500 here, $42,000 there, all destined for an entity called Golden Horizon Holdings in Grand Cayman. He was moving it just as the subpoenas were being printed. Elena noted to her partner. He knew the walls were closing in, and he decided to raid his own treasury. Rorschach had been arrogant enough to believe that a digital wall in a tax haven would protect him. He had spent years studying the flow of money, but he had underestimated the tenacity of the paper pushers. They followed the breadcrumbs through 3 different banks, eventually freezing $16.5 million in a single afternoon. When Stephen heard the news from his lawyer in the holding cell, he didn't yell. He didn't even flinch. He just looked at the wall and asked for a glass of water. For the first time, the Alpha realized he was no longer the one in control of the hunt. Chapter 19, The Arrogance of the Alpha. The trial wasn't just about fraud. It was a character study. Stephen Rorschach's defense team, a phalanx of high-priced legal talent, attempted to frame him as a visionary who was too successful for his own good. My client didn't set out to scam anyone, the lead attorney argued before the jury. He built a $250 million company from a basement. Mistakes happen in hypergrowth. Billing errors occur. But to call this a criminal conspiracy is an overreach of the state. But then the prosecution called the former employees the ones who hadn't been charged. They spoke of a boiler room atmosphere where the primary metric wasn't customer satisfaction, but card success rate. If a customer called to cancel, we were told to hang up. One witness testified. If they called twice, we were told to put them on a Michael Johnson hold. There was no Michael Johnson. There was only the clock, and the clock meant more billing cycles. Rorschach sat at the defense table, leaning back, a slight smirk still playing on his lips. He looked like he was watching a movie he found slightly boring. He truly believed that his brilliance excused his brutality. He looked at the victims in the gallery, people like Ryan and Ellie, and he didn't see lives he had damaged. He saw overhead. Chapter 20, The Weight of the Ring. In Atlanta, the silence left by Kirk Wright's suicide was heavier than the noise of his fraud. For the NFL players, the rings they wore were no longer symbols of victory. They were reminders of how much they had to lose. Steve Atwater found himself acting as an unofficial grief counselor for half a dozen former teammates. One afternoon, he sat in a diner with a retired linebacker whose knees were so shot he could barely walk. I needed that money for the surgery. Steve, the man said, staring at his coffee. I've got 5 years of mobility left, if I'm lucky. Kirk knew that. He sat at my dinner table and told me he'd make sure my kids didn't have to worry about college. I know. Atwater said, his heart heavy. I told you to trust him. That's on me, too. No, it's not on you. It's on the suit. He looked like the future. Steve, he looked like the version of us that could win without getting hit. The tragedy of the IMA fraud wasn't just the $150 million. It was the fact that these men, who had spent their lives being the toughest people on the planet, had been brought to their knees by a man with a spreadsheet and a Harvard tie. The physical wounds of the NFL were nothing compared to the psychological wound of being played for a fool. Chapter 21, the shadow of justice. As the years passed, the funny money cases became textbooks for law enforcement. They showed how a single personality, charismatic, relentless, and completely devoid of empathy, could hijack the lives of thousands. Stephen Warshak's 25-year sentence was a shock to the white-collar world. It was a signal that the tax on pride had finally been audited. He would spend the prime of his life in a federal facility, watching the world move on without him. Smiling Bob was still on TV, but the man who had birthed